Hi, it's me, Ann Farabee. The well. Most Jews avoided traveling through Samaria, but not Jesus. He needed to go through Samaria, for he had a God work to do. There was a heart that needed to be worked on. It was around lunchtime. He had been walking on foot. It was probably hot. He was probably weary. He sat down on the well made of stones, cold, hard stones. He sat to rest for a minute and to rescue a life. The woman came to draw water. The timing of her arrival was no accident. That was the time of day those who had poor reputations showed up to avoid the crowd. This was part of her daily work, providing water to meet the needs of her family. Was she expecting to meet Jesus? No. Was Jesus expecting to meet her? Yes. The stage had been set. Jesus sent his disciples to the store to get meat. I suppose it was their food lion of the day. Yes, Jesus, the man who usually talked to the multitudes, had stopped by the well to talk to the one. He looked at her and he said, "Give me to drink." It was not a command, but a pathway to conversation with her. Those passing through town often had requests for water, but never to the Samaritans, for they had no dealings with them. At this point, I imagine her looking around like, "Who, me? This man knows I'm a Samaritan, part of the hated mixed race and of low social position. Is he talking to me?" Somehow, I think she knew right then that this was no ordinary stranger, and this would not be an ordinary day at the well. "Give me to drink" had been his words. 4 words that would lead to more words. The door had been opened. Communication was coming, as Jesus said. If you only knew the gift of God and who's talking to you, you would have asked me for living water. Can you almost envision the inquisitive look on her face? What was he talking about? That communication made no sense. She didn't have anything to draw with. The water was deep. Jacob gave them the well that they all drank from for his children and his cattle. This man could not offer them any more than that. She did not understand the what of his words, nor the why of his words, but she understood enough to desire to stay and hear more, for she had never had a conversation like this one. She had mostly been avoided. He then told her that with the water she had, she would get thirsty again, but with his water, she would never thirst again, because it was living water and would spring up into everlasting life. Her response was awesome. "Give me this water," she said. Apparently, she foresaw never being thirsty again, not having to come to the well twice a day anymore, and an easier life. Jesus had opened up the door, and she was going through. She was probably stopped dead in her tracks at his next words as he began to point out things he knew about her already. He knew her sins of the past. He knew she'd been married 5 times. He knew she was living with someone now that was not her husband. As they talked, the words of Jesus were beginning to change her heart, for he was revealing himself to her, not all at once, but slowly, giving her time to comprehend. Something she barely understood was changing her perspective in life to God's perspective. The woman, an outcast who knew little about God, said, "I know the Messiah is coming," which is called Christ. Somehow I think she asked this softly as if it were a question, for she finally knew that someone was about to give her hope and a future. Perhaps some of the greatest words ever spoken to humanity were not spoken to a king, but to this sinful woman, when Jesus said, "I that speak unto thee am he." She was talking to Christ. Christ was talking to her. The disciples came back, so she knew it was time for her to leave and head back to the city. But guess what she did? When she left behind her water pot. Yes, her water pot, the very reason she had come. Don't you think that was because she now had living water? What did she do when she got back to the city? She witnessed to others as she said, "Come see a man, is not this the Christ?" "Yes," would be my response. "This is the Christ." for I met Jesus Christ at the well too. I like to call it my well of salvation. With joy, we will draw water from the wells of salvation. Isaiah 12:3. The well of living water is all ours. We just have to tap into it.